I'm Ratna Bhushan, a friend, motivator, and guide to IAS aspirant, international motivational speaker, leadership trainer, CEO, coach, political strategist, and policy advisor. Welcome to ASG. ASG, IAS believe in quality, commitment, and success. Today's news. Sources: The Hindu newspaper, Indian Express. China launches ambitious Mars mission. Beijing wants to join US in successfully landing a spacecraft on the right planet. China launched its most ambitious Mars mission yet on Thursday in a bold attempt to join the US in successfully landing a spacecraft on the right planet. On Long March 5, Carrier rocket took off under clear skies on 12 to 40 p.m. at Henan Island, south of China's mainland. Hundreds of the space enthusiasts carried out excitedly on a beach across the bay from the launch site. This is a kind of hope, a kind of strength, said Lai Taipeng, co-founder of the Chinese branch of the Mars Society, an international enthusiastic group. China's space agency said that rocket carried the probe for 36 minutes before successfully placing it on the looping path that will take beyond Earth's orbit and eventually into Mars' more distant orbit around the Sun. China's tandem spacecraft with both an orbiter and the rover will take 7 months to reach Mars, like others. If all goes well, Tianwen quest for heavenly truth will look for underground water. If it's present as well as evidence of possible ancient life. It marked the second flight to Mars this week after a UAE orbiter blasted off on a rocket from the Japan on the Monday, and the US is aiming to launch Perseverance. It's the most sophisticated Mars rover ever from Cape Canaveral, Florida next week. Solo attempt. This isn't China's first attempt at Mars. In 2011, a Chinese orbiter accompanying Russian mission was lost when the spacecraft failed to get off Earth's orbit after launching from Kazakhstan, eventually burning up in the atmosphere. This time, China is going it alone. It's a fast tracking, launching an orbiter and rover on the same mission instead of stringing them out. Landing on Mars is notoriously difficult. Only the US has successfully landed a spacecraft on the Martian soil, doing it 8 times since 1976. The next news is deepening India-South Korea ties. Deepening India-South Korea ties. People from the two countries need to overcome cultural biases and move closer to each other. India and South Korea have signed a numerous bilateral agreements with the aim of taking the ties to the next level. However, the economic partnership is struck at $22 billion annually, and the defense partnership appears to have needed from the great all-round promise to the mere sale and purchase of the weapon system. At the heart of the bilateral stasis is the fact that despite the best of efforts of many well-intended leaders, Indians and South Koreans are failing to touch a mutually meaningful code of the empathy and more closer to each other as possible. This is a part due to the cultural prejudices on both sides, which stands in the way of the relationship based on the openness, curiosity, and warmth. It is not that efforts to correct distortions in such perceptions have been wanting. Yet clearly whatever bilateral progress has been made, say in the realm of the trade and investment, has not lent sufficient momentum that people start building bridges in other areas. So for example, there may be a widespread perceptions among the South Korean of India as a third world country, rape and poverty and hunger. While it is true that India is for eradicating these deprivations, and that extent may be exaggerated in the minds of some people. On the flip side, it is often the case that Indians are unable to distinguish between the cultural and social characteristic of South Korean people of the East Asians. Indians in South Korea. Within the South Korea, the integration of Indians in the local population is far from the complete. There have been some instances of what appears to be a racial prejudice and discrimination, including toward Indians in work setting in the South Korea. As in any relationship, mutual respect regarding cultural value is the key to building a robust partnership between the two countries. The means to achieving that respect is often filling the information gap that creates a chasm between the two strong culture. How much do Indians based in South Korea? How about the Korean cultural contributed to the growth of the broader Asian view of the world? It is more likely that average Indian mind, the defining the traits of the Japan and China's culture are better identified than this Korean culture. All this is a way to say something, nothing of the hostility that some visiting South Korean have faced in India. Indian culture center in Seoul. 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 This trajectory of the India's engagement with a strategically important Asian nation suggests that an urgent course corrections is required. To establish the establishment of the Indian Culture Center (ICC) in Seoul 10 years ago was a step in the right direction. Its mission was to promote people to people contacts. Yet, given the current focus on the diplomatic initiative, an important but not in the only component of the potentially rich bilateral space, it can sometimes be complicated for the average South Korean to access the offices and services. The ICC attempt to broad base an appreciation of the Indian culture by, for example, teaching South Indian dances to elementary schools students in South Korea, or the organizing experimental sessions centered in Indian cuisine or compatible. Yet, it may reach an exponentially wider audience if the focus of such efforts were the common man of South Korea beyond the urban English speaking elite of the soul. The same may be applicable to Korean culture centers in India. As the balance of the power in the region contributes to shift fast, India and Korea may need each like never before to protect their ways of life. However, both countries will able to help each other only if they can fill the cultural gaps. The regional hegemon is already pushing hard into the ambit of the Indian Ocean. The ambit of the Indian Ocean, ambit of the Indian Ocean. The sooner these bonds are renewed, the better it would be all Asian democrats. Women officers can now get permanent commission in army. Women officers can now get permanent commission in the army. Women officers can now get permanent commission in army. Defense Ministry issues formal order. The Ministry of Defense has issued the formal government sanctions letter for the grant of the permanent commission (PC) to women officers in the army. In anticipation, the Army headquarters had set in the motion a series of the preparatory actions of conduct of the Permanent Commission Selection Board for affected women officers. The election will be scheduled as soon as all affected Short Service Commission women officers exercise their option and complete requisite documentation, the Army said in the statement on Thursday. 10 streams. The order specifies the grant of the permanent commission to SSC women officers in the all 10 streams in which they are presently served. 1. Army Air Defense, Signals, Engineers, Army Aviation, Electronics and Mechanical Engineers,